Why is chicory added to coffee in India? What's the story? How did filter coffee come to India? What's the story? Find out. Who can refuse a creamy, hot, sugary, frothy cup of strong filter coffee? I know I can't. So, what are the attributes of a filter coffee? A filter coffee is coffee combined with chicory root. Chicory root is essentially what makes the coffee smoky, mildly bitter, and it is why milk and sugar is added to this coffee to make the perfect blend. If you call it a Mysore filter coffee, it needs to be served in this combination of two containers, a glass and a dabara or a cup into which the coffee is poured to cool it off. Filter coffee must also be made in a filter. Chicory root refers to the root of the chicory plant, Cicorium intybus, a perennial herb with blue flowers, which is dried, roasted, and ground to be used in coffee or as a coffee substitute. In India, particularly in South India, chicory root is mixed with coffee to produce that classic filter coffee taste. Filter coffee was first introduced to the soldiers working in the British Army in British Raj, India in the 1800s. Canned coffee was 4% coffee and the rest of it was chicory and water. When we began to grow our coffee locally, the concept of adding chicory to coffee remained, and so now most South Indian coffees made for filter coffee have a percentage of chicory in it. It can be as low as 20% and as high as 50%. There are lots of people who buy coffee to make filter coffee who are connoisseurs who don't want any chicory in their coffee. I prefer to have at least 20% because it gives it that unique flavor, that taste that we've so come to love and makes it so special. The coffee plant, scientifically known as coffea, is a tropical evergreen shrub or small tree from the family Rubiaceae, cultivated for its seeds or beans. The two main commercial species are coffee arabica or arabica and coffee canephora or robusta, which produce the popular arabica and robusta coffees. These plants produce red or purple fruits called coffee cherries, which contain the seeds that are roasted and ground to make the beverage. A man called Baba Budan is central to the history of coffee in India. Also known as Hazrat Shah Jana Bala Magatabi, he was a 17th century Sufi saint from Chikmagalur, Karnataka. In 1670, he undertook a pilgrimage to Mecca. During his travels through Yemen, he drank coffee and really enjoyed it. At this time, Arabia, specifically Yemen, had a strict monopoly on coffee cultivation. They exported only roasted beans to prevent others from growing them. Baba Budan smuggled 7 coffee beans hidden in his beard and waistband back to India. He then planted these beans on the slopes of the Chandragiri Hills, today called Baba Budangiri Hills in Chikmagalur, making this the birthplace of Indian coffee cultivation. India is now the 6th largest coffee producer in the world. In the American Civil War, Napoleon's blockade on ships had prevented coffee from being transported to the United States. The lack of coffee is what led to chicory being used to imitate the flavors of coffee. Napoleon's continental blockade cut France off from British-controlled coffee imports, so they turned to chicory. French colonies, especially New Orleans, adopted the practice and it began to spread. The Dutch too used chicory in Netherlands and in their colonies Java and Indonesia. Cut chicory root, dried it, boiled it and made this dark, kind of bitter, smoky liquid which they drank instead. It became so popular that eventually when the war ended and coffee supplies were renewed, people started adding this chicory to coffee because it reminded them of the flavor they had become so used to. The French legacy of using chicory with coffee continues in some of America's southern states, especially New Orleans, where this coffee is served with milk and sugar and is extremely popular and attracts tourists from all over the world. Filter coffee generally use Robusta beans because you got better crema, a deeper, darker, smokier flavor, which really worked well with the addition of chicory. How do you make a really good cup of filter coffee? What are the do's? What are the don'ts? How do you get that perfect, steaming, hot, creamy, milky, sugary filter coffee? Find out. To make good filter coffee, you need a good brand of filter coffee, and you can decide how much chicory you want in it. None if you don't want any at all, but then I feel it's not really filter coffee. You need a good filter coffee press, which comes in many different materials from stainless steel to brass to copper, but it always has 4 parts in it: a lid, 2 chambers, one into which the decoction collects by drip method, and the filter itself, and a coffee stamper or a coffee press. Once you have these together, just make sure they're very clean and the perforations are clean so that the coffee can drip without any obstacles. Now, some people add cold water, some people add tap water, some add hot water. I prefer to use hot water, not boiling water, because I don't want to burn the coffee. But I feel that warm water helps to bloom the coffee better and you get the decoction sooner. If you use cold water or tap water, you may have to wait overnight. This drip is slow, but the slowness is what gives you a really, really complex flavor. You start off essentially by adding coffee to the filter, which you place over the decoction chamber. And you press it down lightly with your press. I like to leave my press in because it helps to keep the coffee down. Add some water to it. I'm adding warm water here. Just up to that ridge. And then you shut it with your lid and you just leave it. And that's all you really need to do. It'll take about 3 to 4 hours depending on the size of your filter coffee maker. But as you can see, it is really a very simple process. Watch how I do it one more time. Here I'm using a coffee grind that has about 20% chicory in it, which is my favorite combination. And into this again I'm adding hot water. I've made 2 because we had guests that day and we needed extra decoction. I always like to make this decoction fresh. I don't like to keep this decoction in the fridge. As you can see now, you have there about a quarter cup of decoction. I'm going to add some sugar to my filter coffee. Some people add the sugar to the milk. But then, of course, people can't choose how much sugar they want. Here I'm making Mysore filter coffee, which means I've got 2 containers here. But of course, you can just make it in a regular cup with a saucer, a tumbler, anything that takes your fancy. I start off first by adding in the decoction. I don't like to heat the decoction because I feel it interferes with the original flavors. So therefore, your milk has to be boiling hot when you add it. You generally add it from a height, because this foam on top is a very important part of authentic filter coffee. You cannot make filter coffee without this foam on top. Of course, if you don't want sugar, you can use a sugar substitute or no sugar at all. It's a very easy process once you have your decoction. You can use a pot which has a small little mouth. This helps to make the milk fall sort of in a straight stream downstairs. You can use a little pitcher as well if you like. Now the foam must come from the pouring of the milk. You can't take the foam out of a milk foam machine. That would not make this coffee authentic. It should be drunk very hot. And in the case of the Mysore coffee cup and saucer, you basically pour it into the dabara down below to cool it off so that it's easy enough for you to drink.